I was folding laundry in the guest room, my guest room in my house that I'd signed over to my son 5 years ago, when I heard my daughter-in-law Melissa's voice drift up from downstairs. "I can't do this anymore, Brandon. Your mother has to go." I froze, a towel half folded in my hands. "Melissa, she lives here. This is her home, too." My son's voice, uncertain, wavering. "No, Brandon, this is our home. She signed it over to you, remember? And I'm done. I'm done with her comments about my parenting, done with her taking over my kitchen, done with her acting like she's the woman of this house. She doesn't act like that. She does. She undermines me in front of the kids. Emma asked me yesterday why Grandma lets her have candy before dinner, but I don't. Your mother is making me look like the bad guy to my own children." I set down the towel, my hands shaking. Emma had asked for a single piece of candy. One piece, and I'd said yes, because she'd eaten all her lunch and finished her homework. I hadn't been undermining anyone. "I'll talk to her," Brandon said weakly. "No, talking doesn't work. She needs to leave, Brandon. It's me and the kids, or it's her. Choose." The silence that followed felt like it lasted forever. Then my son said, "Okay, I'll tell her." Something inside my chest cracked. Not broke. It had broken before, when my husband died 3 years ago, and I'd been alone for the first time in my life. This was different. This was the sound of my son choosing his wife's comfort over his mother's home. I went back to folding laundry, hands moving mechanically, while I waited for Brandon to come upstairs. He appeared in the doorway 20 minutes later, his face flushed, his eyes avoiding mine. "Mom, we need to talk. I heard you and Melissa. You don't need to repeat it." He looked relieved that he didn't have to say the words. "It's not that we don't love you. It's just Melissa feels like she doesn't have space to be the mother she wants to be with you here. I've been helping with the children, picking them up from school, making dinner when you both work late. I thought I was being helpful." "You are. You're very helpful. But," he trailed off, searching for words. "Melissa needs to feel like she's in charge of her own home. This was my home first, Brandon. I lived here for 30 years. I raised you in this house. Your father died in this house. And I signed it over to you because you said you wanted your children to grow up here, where you grew up." "I know, Mom, and we're grateful." "Are you? Because right now it sounds like you're kicking me out because your wife is uncomfortable. That's not fair, isn't it?" I looked at my son, 43 years old, successful real estate agent, father of 2 beautiful children, and I barely recognized him. His face hardened. "This is my home now, Mom. You signed it over to me. Legally, you're a guest here. And if my wife doesn't want you here anymore, then—" He couldn't finish the sentence. "Then I need to leave," I finished for him. "I'm sorry." "No, you're not. If you were sorry, you'd stand up to Melissa. You'd tell her this is unreasonable. But you won't, because you're afraid of her." "I'm not afraid of my wife." "Then why are you doing this?" He was quiet for a long moment. Then, "I need you to be out by the end of the month. That gives you 2 weeks to find a place." After he left, I sat on the bed, the guest bed in what used to be my sewing room, and thought about choices and consequences, and the trust funds I'd set up for my grandchildren. Emma, 7 years old, bright and curious, who loved when I read her stories before bed. Jackson, 5 years old, full of energy, who called me Gamma because he couldn't pronounce grandma when he was little. 2 trust funds, each containing $350,000. Money I'd been saving and investing since they were born. Money meant to secure their futures, college, first homes, starting their adult lives. money that Brandon and Melissa didn't know the full details about. I pulled out my phone and called my attorney. Linda, it's Catherine. I need to make some changes to my grandchildren's trust funds. Finding an apartment took me 4 days. I chose a small 2-bedroom place across town. Nothing fancy, but clean and affordable on my pension and Social Security. The second bedroom would be for the grandchildren, I thought while signing the lease. Then I remembered I wouldn't be seeing the grandchildren anymore. Brandon had made that clear during our second conversation, 3 days after the first. Melissa thinks it's better if you don't see Emma and Jackson for a while, just until things settle down. Better for whom? For everyone. The kids have been upset about you leaving. Melissa thinks they need time to adjust without you confusing them. I'm their grandmother, Brandon. You can't just ban me from seeing them. I'm not banning you. I'm just asking you to give us some space. A few months, maybe? A few months? Or longer. We'll see how it goes. I'd hung up on him. The first time I'd ever hung up on my own son. That night, I met with Linda Morrison, my attorney, at her office downtown. Linda was 65, sharp as a knife, and had been handling my legal affairs since my husband died. She'd helped me set up the trusts for Emma and Jackson, structure them to minimize taxes, and ensure the money would be there when they needed it. So, you want to change the trust terms, Linda said, reading over the documents I'd brought. Currently, each grandchild gets access to their full trust at age 21, with your permission for earlier access for education or medical expenses. That's right. And you want to change it to, I want to add conditions. The money is only accessible if the grandchildren maintain a relationship with me. Linda set down her pen. Catherine, that's called a conditional gift. They're legal, but complicated. You need to be very specific about what constitutes maintaining a relationship. I want them to contact me at least once a month after they turn 18. A phone call, a visit, a letter, some form of genuine contact. If they don't reach out for 6 consecutive months, the trust funds are forfeit, and the money goes to charity. And if Brandon and Melissa force them to contact you, just going through the motions, then I want you to add a clause. If there's evidence the parents are coercing contact solely to preserve the trust money, the funds are void. This has to be real, Linda. I don't want fake relationships built on financial obligation. That's going to be hard to prove either way. I'll know. When Emma and Jackson turn 18, if they reach out to me, I'll know whether it's real or not, and I'll have the power to release the funds or not. Linda studied me for a long moment. This is about more than money, isn't it? This is about teaching my son and his wife that actions have consequences. They're cutting me out of my grandchildren's lives because it's convenient for them right now. But in 15 years, when Emma turns 21 and asks where her trust fund is, they'll have to explain why they kept her from her grandmother. You're banking on the grandchildren resenting their parents. I'm banking on the grandchildren learning the truth. Right now, Brandon and Melissa control the narrative. They'll tell Emma and Jackson that Grandma moved away, that she didn't want to see them anymore, whatever story makes them look good. But when those kids are 18, old enough to reach out on their own, they'll have a choice. And that choice will come with a very expensive consequence if they choose not to know me. This is going to devastate Brandon when he finds out. Good, I said coldly. He devastated me. Now it's his turn. Linda drew up the new trust documents that week. The changes were legal, binding, and irrevocable. Once I signed them, there was no going back. The trusts now contained several key provisions. Emma and Jackson would be informed of the trust funds on their 18th birthdays. To access any money, they must have maintained contact with me minimum once a month from ages 18 to age 21. If contact was not maintained, the money would go to the Alzheimer's Association, a charity close to my heart since my mother had died of the disease. If there was evidence parents had coerced contact, I retained sole discretion to release or withhold funds. Brandon and Melissa would not be informed of these changes until Emma turned 18. That last provision is the knife twist, Linda observed as I signed the final documents. They won't know what's coming until it's too late to fix it. They kicked me out and banned me from seeing my grandchildren. They deserved a knife twist. Moving day was miserable. Brandon had offered to help, but I'd refused. I hired movers instead. 2 kind men in their 20s who didn't ask questions about why a 71-year-old woman was moving out of a beautiful house into a small apartment. Emma and Jackson weren't allowed to say goodbye. Melissa had taken them to her mother's house for the day. Better this way, Brandon had texted me. Clean break. As if I was a bad habit he was quitting. The movers loaded up my bedroom furniture, my clothes, the photos from my walls, the books from my shelves. 30 years of life packed into boxes and driven away. I left behind the house I'd loved, the garden I'd planted, the kitchen where I'd cooked thousands of meals, the living room where Emma and Jackson had played on the floor while I watched them, memorizing their laughter, their faces, their innocence. Brandon stood in the driveway as the moving truck pulled away. "Mom, I hope you understand this isn't personal." I looked at my son, my only child, the boy I raised alone after his father's death, the man I sacrificed everything for, and felt nothing but cold, calculated determination. "Oh, it's very personal, Brandon. You'll understand just how personal in about 11 years. I drove away without looking back. The first year was the hardest. I'd set up the second bedroom in my apartment with toys and books, hoping Brandon would change his mind, would let me see the grandchildren, would realize how cruel the separation was. He didn't. Melissa sent me a Facebook friend request 6 months after I moved out. I accepted, curious what she wanted. The answer became clear immediately. She was using social media to show me everything I was missing. Photos of Emma and Jackson on Halloween, first day of school pictures, birthday parties, family vacations. Every post was a carefully curated reminder that life was going on without me. I looked at every photo, studied Emma's face, watched her grow from 7 to 8, her smile becoming more guarded, more aware. Watched Jackson lose his baby fat, his cheeks thinning, his gamma probably forgotten. And I waited. My days developed a routine. Morning walks, volunteer work at the library, lunch with other women my age who understood what it meant to be cut off from grandchildren. Afternoons reading or gardening on my small balcony. It was a quiet life, a lonely life. But it was a life where I wasn't walking on eggshells around my daughter-in-law, wasn't second-guessing every word I said, wasn't watching my son choose his wife over his mother again and again. I made one attempt to reach out. 8 months after moving out, I sent Emma a birthday card with a gift card to her favorite bookstore, $25, and a note that said, "Happy 8th birthday, sweetheart. Grandma loves you." The card came back 2 weeks later, returned to sender, written across the front in Melissa's handwriting. And that's when I stopped trying. If they wanted me gone, I'd be gone. But I'd leave them a present they wouldn't discover until it was too late to fix. Year 2 brought changes. Brandon's real estate business took a hit during a market downturn. He'd overextended himself, taken out loans for investment properties that weren't selling. I knew this because my former neighbors, people who'd been my friends for decades before I moved, kept me informed. Brandon's worried, my old neighbor Patricia told me over coffee. I heard him on the phone with someone about missing a mortgage payment. On your old house, I think. The house that had been paid off when I'd signed it over to him. Did he take out a mortgage? I asked. Equity line of credit, I heard. Something about investment opportunities. Patricia stirred her coffee. Catherine, I'm not trying to gossip, but I thought you should know. That house was yours. If he loses it... I pushed down the anger. Brandon had leveraged my house, the house where his father and I had raised him, to make risky investments. And now he might lose it. Good, I thought coldly. Let him lose it. Let him feel what it's like when security disappears. But I said nothing, just thanked Patricia for the information and changed the subject. In September of that second year, I saw Emma. It was an accident. I was at the grocery store, turning down the cereal aisle, when I nearly ran into her with my cart. She was taller now, 9 years old, her hair longer, pulled back in a ponytail. She wore a school uniform I didn't recognize. Our eyes met. Grandma? Her voice was uncertain, like she wasn't sure I was real. My heart lurched. Hi, sweetheart. I thought you moved away. I did, just across town. I live in an apartment now. Why don't you come see us anymore? Before I could answer, Melissa appeared, pushing a cart, Jackson trailing behind her. Melissa, come here. Now. Melissa's voice was sharp. But, Mom, it's Grandma. I said now. Emma's face fell. She looked at me one more time, her expression confused and hurt, before walking to her mother. Melissa grabbed Emma's hand and steered her away without looking at me. But Jackson had seen me. Gamma? His voice was small, questioning. Jackson, come on. Melissa pulled him along. He looked back at me as they walked away, his expression bewildered. I stood there in the cereal aisle, shaking, until another shopper asked if I was okay. I'm fine, I lied. Just fine. That night, I called Linda. I saw the grandchildren today, at the store. Melissa wouldn't let them talk to me. I'm sorry, Catherine. Don't be sorry. Just tell me the trust funds are secure. Tell me Brandon can't touch them. They're completely secure, irrevocable trusts in the grandchildren's names. Brandon has no legal access. Neither does Melissa. Good, because when Emma turns 18, she's going to have questions. And when she finds out her parents kept her from a grandmother who loved her, who set up her entire future, she's going to be furious. That's 9 more years, Catherine. Are you sure you want to wait that long? I'm sure. Revenge is a dish best served cold, Linda, and I'm very, very patient. Year 3 brought bankruptcy. Brandon's investments had collapsed completely. The equity line on my house, his house now, was called in. He couldn't pay. The bank foreclosed. My beautiful house, where I'd lived for 30 years, where I'd raised my son and cared for my dying husband, was auctioned off to strangers. Patricia called me the day the moving trucks came. Catherine, I'm so sorry. They're packing up now. Brandon looks devastated. Where are they going? I heard Melissa's parents are letting them move in, temporarily, until they get back on their feet. So Brandon and Melissa and my grandchildren were moving into Melissa's parents' house. Cramped quarters, loss of independence, the humiliation of being middle-aged adults living with parents. I should have felt satisfaction. Instead, I felt hollow. But I didn't reach out, didn't offer money or help or comfort. Brandon had made his choice 3 years ago. Now he was living with it. A month after they moved, I got a phone call from an unknown number. "Catherine, this is Robert Chen, Melissa's father." I'd met Robert twice, once at Brandon and Melissa's wedding, once at Emma's baptism. He'd seemed like a decent man, a retired pharmacist, quiet and kind. "Hello, Robert. I'm calling because I think you should know something about Brandon and Melissa, about why Melissa wanted you out of the house." I sat down slowly. "I'm listening." "Melissa has always been difficult with my wife's mother-in-law, with her sister's mother-in-law. She has a pattern of pushing older women out of family dynamics." He paused. "When Brandon told me they were asking you to move out, I told him it was wrong, that you'd given them that house, that you deserved respect." "What did he say?" "He said Melissa threatened divorce if he didn't choose her, said she'd take the kids and he'd barely see them." So Brandon had been trapped too, manipulated by a woman who knew his weaknesses and exploited them. It didn't excuse what he'd done, but it explained it. "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked. "Because living here, seeing how Melissa treats my wife, I realize my daughter has a problem, and I think you deserve to know it wasn't really about you. It was about Melissa needing control."
"Does Brandon know you're calling me?" "No, and I'd appreciate if you didn't tell him. But Catherine, those grandchildren of yours, they ask about you. Emma especially. She doesn't understand why you disappeared. Melissa won't let me see them. I know, but I wanted you to know they haven't forgotten you." After we hung up, I sat in my small apartment and cried for the first time since moving out. Emma and Jackson hadn't forgotten me. They wanted to see me. But Melissa controlled access like a prison warden, and Brandon was too weak to fight her. I pulled out my laptop and opened the trust fund documents, reading through them again. 9 years until Emma turned 18. 7 years until Jackson turned 18. I could wait. I would wait. And when the time came, my grandchildren would have a choice their parents never gave me. Years 4 and 5 passed in a blur of routine and waiting. I turned 75, started slowing down physically, my knees aching on cold days, my hands developing arthritis. Brandon sent me a birthday card, the first communication in years. Inside was a generic message, "Happy birthday, Mom," and no personal note. I threw it away. 6 months later, Melissa sent me an email. Subject: the kids. "Catherine, Emma and Jackson have been asking about you again. Emma found some old photos and wanted to know why you don't come around anymore. I think it might be time for you to see them. Not regularly, but maybe once every few months, for the kids' sake. Let me know when works for you. Melissa." I read the email 3 times, looking for the trap. It was in the casual tone, the suggestion that she was doing me a favor, the implication that access to my grandchildren was hers to grant or withhold. I called Linda. "They want me back in the kids' lives, after 4 years of keeping me away. What are you going to do?" "I'm going to say no." "Catherine, are you sure? This might be your only chance to rebuild a relationship with Emma and Jackson before they're adults. Or it's Melissa realizing that Emma is going to start asking harder questions in a few years. She's 12 now, old enough to wonder why Grandma disappeared. Melissa's trying to control the narrative before Emma figures it out herself. You think she suspects something? I think she's smart enough to know that cutting me out completely makes her look bad, but if she lets me back in, keeps it limited and controlled, she stays in charge." I paused. "No, I waited 4 years. I can wait 5 more. When Emma turns 18, she'll reach out on her own. Or she won't, but it'll be her choice, not Melissa's. I deleted the email without responding. 2 days later, Brandon called. Mom, Melissa sent you an email about seeing the kids. I got it. Why didn't you respond? Because I'm not interested in seeing my grandchildren on Melissa's terms. She kept them from me for 4 years. I'm not going to come running the second she decides it's convenient. You're their grandchildren. Don't you want to see them? Of course I do, but I'm not going to be jerked around by your wife. She wanted me gone, I'm gone. She doesn't get to change the rules when it suits her. You're being stubborn. I'm being consistent. You and Melissa made your choice. Now live with it. I hung up. He didn't call back. Year 6 brought Robert Chen's death. Heart attack, sudden, devastating. He was 72 years old. I went to the funeral, not for Melissa, for Robert, who'd called me once to explain that what I'd suspected, that Melissa was the problem, not me. Brandon and Melissa were there with the children. Emma was 13 now, tall and serious, her face reflecting the grief of losing her grandfather. Jackson was 11, trying to be brave, his eyes red from crying. They saw me. Emma's face lit up. Actual, genuine joy at seeing her grandmother. She started walking toward me. Melissa grabbed her arm. We need to sit down. Service is starting. But Grandma's here. Now, Emma. I watched my granddaughter's face crumple with disappointment as she was led away. After the service, during the reception at Melissa's mother's house, I found myself alone in a hallway looking at family photos on the wall. Emma appeared beside me. Grandma, her voice was soft. Why did you leave? I kneeled down, my knees protesting, so I was at her level.
That's a conversation you should have with your mother and father.
They said you wanted space, that you needed to live independently.
Lies. But I couldn't tell a 13-year-old that her parents were liars. Emma, when you're 18, if you want to know the whole truth, come find me. I'll tell you everything. Why do I have to wait until I'm 18? Because right now, you're a child, and children shouldn't be put in the middle of adult conflicts. But when you're an adult, you can make your own choices about who you have relationships with. Do you still love us? Me and Jackson? My throat tightened. More than anything in the world. Then why did you stop seeing us? I didn't stop Emma. I was stopped. Before she could ask more questions, Melissa appeared. Emma, what did I tell you about wandering off? She looked at me coldly. Catherine, thank you for coming. You can leave now. This is your mother's house. I'm here to pay respects to Robert. And you've done that. Now go. I stood up slowly, my knees aching, looked down at Emma, who was watching our exchange with growing understanding in her eyes. Happy early birthday, Emma. You're going to be 14 soon. How did you know? Did Dad tell you? I know because I remember the day you were born. I was there. I held you when you were 10 minutes old. I looked at Melissa. Some things can't be taken away, no matter how hard you try. I left before Melissa could respond. But I'd seen Emma's face, seen the wheels turning. She was old enough now to know something was wrong, to question the story her parents had told her. 4 more years until she turned 18. I could wait. Year 8 brought my health scare. Breast cancer, early stage, caught during a routine mammogram. Surgery, radiation, recovery. 6 months of hell that I went through alone, except for Linda and a few friends my age who understood. Brandon found out through Patricia, my former neighbor. He came to see me in the hospital after my surgery. Mom, why didn't you tell me? Would you have cared? Of course I'd have cared. You're my mother. I'm the mother you threw out 4 years ago. I'm the mother you've seen maybe 3 times since then. Why would I think you'd care now? He sat down heavily in the chair beside my bed. Brandon and Melissa and we're not doing well. She's talking about divorce. Good, I thought, but I said nothing. She's always angry. Nothing I do is right. The kids walk on eggshells around her. He looked at me. I should have stood up to her years ago. Should have told her you weren't leaving. But you didn't. I was afraid she'd take the kids. And now she's taking them anyway. I adjusted my hospital bed, wincing at the pain from the incisions. Brandon, I can't be your mother the way I used to be. You made choices that broke something between us. Maybe it can be fixed someday, but not today. Not while I'm recovering from surgery and you're only here because you feel guilty. I do feel guilty. Good. You should. He left shortly after. Didn't come back during my recovery. But Emma sent me a card, handmade with drawings of flowers and a message in her teenage handwriting. Get well soon, Grandma. I love you. It sat on my hospital bedside table through 2 weeks of recovery. The only card I received. The only one I needed. 3 years until Emma turned 18. I was going to make it. I had to. Year 8 was the year everything started unraveling for Brandon and Melissa. The divorce Melissa had threatened finally happened. Brandon called me to tell me, Mom, Melissa filed. She wants full custody, child support, alimony. She's going for everything. I'm sorry to hear that. Are you, though? You warned me. Years ago, you said I was choosing her over you and I'd regret it. I didn't say you'd regret it. I said there would be consequences. There's a difference. She's trying to keep the kids from me, says I'm not a fit parent. And are you a fit parent? I'm trying to be, but she's poisoned them against me, told them I was the one who kicked you out, that I was the one who kept them from seeing you. Was she lying? Brandon was quiet. Then, no, but she's the one who demanded it. And you are the one who complied. You both own this, Brandon. Don't pretend you were just a victim. The divorce took a year to finalize. Custody was split 50-50. Brandon got the kids every other week, Melissa the opposite weeks. Child support and alimony left Brandon struggling financially. He moved into a small 2-bedroom apartment, got a roommate to help with costs. My son, at 50 years old, was living like a college student because his choices had caught up to him. I didn't help him, didn't offer money or support or comfort. He'd made his bed, now he's lying in it. But I kept track of Emma and Jackson through Patricia and through social media stalking Melissa's public posts. Emma was 16 now, applying to colleges, bright, ambitious, looking at schools across the country. Jackson was 14, playing soccer, growing tall like his father.
2 years until Emma turned 18. 1 year until Jackson turned 16. The countdown was almost over. Year 9 began with a phone call that changed everything. Catherine, it's Emma. I almost dropped the phone. Emma? How did you get my number? Grandpa Robert's old phone. He had it saved. I've been holding on to it since he died. She paused. Grandma, I need to talk to you about why you really left. My heart pounded. What do you want to know? Everything. Mom and Dad told me you chose to leave, that you wanted independence. But I found something. Old emails between Dad and Grandpa Robert. They were talking about Melissa making Dad choose between her and you. Her voice was shaking. They kicked you out, didn't they? Yes, sweetheart, they did. Why didn't you tell me? Because you were a child. I didn't want to put you in the middle. I'm not a child anymore. I'm 17. I'm old enough to know the truth. So I told her everything. How Melissa had demanded I leave. How Brandon had given me 2 weeks. How they'd kept the grandchildren from me. Sent back my birthday cards. Refused to let me see them at the grocery store. Emma cried. They lied to us. For 9 years, they lied. I'm sorry you had to find out this way. Don't be sorry. I'm glad I know. She took a shaky breath. Grandma, can I see you? Just you and me? Of course. Whenever you want. Tomorrow? After school? Mom has me this week, but I can tell her I'm going to the library. I'll be there. We met at a coffee shop near her school. Emma walked in wearing jeans and her school hoodie, looking so much like Brandon at that age that it hurt. She hugged me tight. I missed you so much. I missed you too, sweetheart. We talked for 2 hours. I told her about the house I'd signed over to Brandon, about the years of being made to feel unwelcome by Melissa, about the final ultimatum. Brandon should have stood up for you, Emma said angrily. Yes, he should have, but he made his choice. Do they know you're telling me this? No. And Emma, I need to tell you something else. Something important. I pulled out the trust fund documents. When you turn 18, you're going to receive a letter from my attorney. It's about money I set aside for you and Jackson. Her eyes widened. How much money? Enough for college, a down payment on a house someday, a good start to your adult life. I explained the terms of the trust, the requirement that she maintain contact with me, the forfeiture if she didn't, the charity designation if the money went unclaimed. You set this up when they kicked you out? Yes. I wanted to make sure that when you were old enough to make your own choices, there was an incentive to choose me. You would have chosen me anyway, even without money. I know that now, but I didn't know it 9 years ago, and I needed something, some insurance that your parents couldn't keep me from you forever. Emma was quiet, processing. Then, does Dad know about this? No. He'll find out when you turn 18, when the attorney sends the letter explaining the terms. He's going to be so angry. Probably. But Emma, this money is yours. It's not his. He doesn't get a vote in how you use it, or whether you accept it. What about Jackson? Does he know? Not yet. When he turns 18, he'll get the same letter, the same choice. Emma smiled, a fierce, determined smile that reminded me of myself. Good. They deserve to know what they took from us, what they took from you. We met every week after that. Emma would tell her parents she was at the library or a friend's house, and we'd have coffee or lunch or just walk in the park. She told me about school, about college applications, about the boys she liked who didn't know she existed. I told her about her grandfather, about Brandon as a child, about the family history she'd been denied. 3 months later, Emma turned 18. The letter from Linda arrived on her birthday. Brandon called me 2 days after Emma's 18th birthday, his voice shaking with rage. What the hell did you do? Hello, Brandon. I'm well. Thank you for asking. The trust fund. Emma showed me the letter. You're blackmailing her into having a relationship with you. I'm not blackmailing anyone. I set up trust funds for my grandchildren years ago. The terms are clear. Maintain contact with me, receive the money. Don't maintain contact, the money goes to charity. That's manipulation. No, that's consequences. You and Melissa manipulated me out of Emma and Jackson's lives. This is my insurance that when they're adults, they have the option to make their own choices. You can't do this. I already did. The documents are signed and filed. There's nothing you can do to change it. I'm calling my lawyer. Go ahead, but Linda assures me everything is completely legal. The money is in irrevocable trusts. You have no claim to it. Neither does Melissa. You're trying to buy Emma's love. No, Brandon, I already have Emma's love. We've been meeting for coffee every week for 3 months. She's choosing to have a relationship with me because she wants to, not because of money. I paused. The money is just the reward for making the right choice, the choice you and Melissa denied her for 9 years. He hung up on me. An hour later, Melissa called. "You vindictive old bitch."
Hello, Melissa. How are you? You know exactly how I am. Emma's been lying to us for months, sneaking around to see you, and now we find out there's a trust fund we knew nothing about. The trust fund I set up with my own money? Yes. It's none of your business, Melissa. It never was. You can't bribe children into relationships. I'm not bribing anyone. Emma came to me. She sought me out after finding emails that proved you and Brandon lied to her for 9 years. The trust fund was just a bonus. She would have chosen me anyway. This is illegal. You can't put conditions on gifts like this. Actually, I can. It's called a conditional trust, and it's perfectly legal. My attorney made sure of that. I kept my voice calm, enjoying her fury. Here's what's going to happen, Melissa. Emma is 18 now, an adult. She gets to choose who she has relationships with, and she's choosing me. You can't stop her. You can't control her. And in 3 years, when Jackson turns 18, he'll have the same choice. I won't let you poison my children against us. I didn't poison them. You did that yourself when you lied to them for 9 years. By the way, Emma asked me if she could move in with me. She doesn't like living in 2 different houses, bouncing between you and Brandon. I told her my door is always open. You stay away from my daughter. She's not a child anymore. She's an adult. And if she wants to live with her grandmother, that's her choice to make. Melissa hung up. I sat in my small apartment, smiling, feeling satisfied for the first time in 9 years. The trap had sprung perfectly. Emma didn't move in immediately. She wanted to finish high school, living with her parents, didn't want the drama of a mid-year move. But she spent every weekend at my apartment. We'd cook together, watch movies, talk about her college plans. She'd been accepted to 3 universities, all out of state, all expensive. I can't afford any of them, she told me sadly. Dad says he'll help, but he's broke from the divorce. Mom says I should go to community college and live at home. What do you want to do? I want to go to Northwestern. Their journalism program is incredible, but it's $60,000 a year. I'd need loans, scholarships, everything. What if you didn't need loans? Emma looked at me. The trust fund? You turn 21 midway through your junior year. If you maintain contact with me, which you're already doing, the full amount becomes accessible. That's $350,000, more than enough for all 4 years, plus living expenses. But I can't access it until I'm 21. I need money now for freshman year. Actually, the trust allows for early distribution with my approval for educational expenses. If you're accepted to Northwestern, I'll authorize the funds for tuition. Tears filled Emma's eyes. You'd do that? Sweetheart, I set that money aside for exactly this purpose. So you could have opportunities, so you could choose the life you want. What do I have to do? Keep being my granddaughter. Keep visiting. Keep calling. Keep being the person you've always been. I took her hand. This isn't about buying your love, Emma. You already chose me before you knew about the money. This is just me making sure you have the future you deserve. Emma threw her arms around me. Thank you, Grandma. Thank you so much. That night, I called Linda. Release the funds for Emma's tuition. She's going to Northwestern. And Brandon? Will probably have a stroke when he finds out, but there's nothing he can do about it. Brandon did more than have a stroke. He showed up at my apartment at 8 p.m., pounding on the door. Open up, Mom. We need to talk. I opened the door but kept the chain on.
Brandon, it's late. What do you want? You're paying for Emma's college behind our backs? Emma's an adult. She doesn't need your permission for me to help her. That money was supposed to be for emergencies, for real needs. Education is a real need, and the trust documents specifically allow for educational distributions with my approval. You trying to steal our children. I'm not stealing anyone. Emma chose me. She chose Moon after she found out you and Brandon lied to her for 9 years. She chose me because she loves me, and I love her. The money is secondary. We're her parents. Then act like it. Stop trying to control her. Stop lying to her. Be honest for once in your lives. I took a breath, steadying myself. Brandon, you had 18 years to be a good father. You spent 9 of those years keeping Emma away from someone who loved her. She's not going to forget that. The trust fund didn't poison her against you. You did that yourself. He stared at me through the chain gap, his face twisted with anger and pain. I hate you, he said quietly. No, you don't. You hate that I won. You hate that your choices have consequences you can't escape. You hate that Emma sees you clearly now and still chose me. I started to close the door. Go home, Brandon. There's nothing left to say. What about Jackson? Are you going to steal him too? Jackson will make his own choice when he turns 18, just like Emma did. If he wants a relationship with me, he'll reach out. If he doesn't, the money goes to charity. Either way, it's his decision. I closed the door, locked it, and listened to Brandon's footsteps retreat down the hallway. The next morning, Emma texted me. Dad tried to convince me not to take your money, said it was manipulation. I told him the only people who manipulated me were him and Mom. I'm going to Northwestern. Thank you for making it possible. Emma graduated high school with honors in June. I attended the ceremony, sitting in the back, watching my granddaughter walk across the stage in her cap and gown. Brandon and Melissa sat in front, separated by several seats, still not able to be civil even for their daughter's graduation. After the ceremony, Emma found me in the crowd. Grandma, you came. Of course I came. I wouldn't miss this. She hugged me tight, then pulled back. There's someone I want you to meet. This is Tyler, my boyfriend. A tall boy with kind eyes shook my hand. Nice to meet you, Mrs. Patterson. Emma talks about you all the time. All good things, I hope. The best things. He smiled at Emma. She says you're the strongest woman she knows. After Tyler left to find his parents, Emma said, Dad and Mom are furious you're here. I don't care what they think anymore. Me neither. She looked at me seriously. Grandma, I want you to know something. Even if there was no money, even if you had nothing to give me, I'd still choose you because you never lied to me. You never tried to keep me from people I loved. You just loved me. Consistently, even when I couldn't see it. That's all I ever wanted to do. I know, and I'm sorry it took me so long to find out the truth. You were a child. You believed what your parents told you. That's not your fault. Emma left for Northwestern in August. I helped her move into her dorm, met her roommate, hung pictures on her walls. Brandon and Melissa had refused to come, said they were too busy. But I knew the truth. They couldn't stand to see me there, being the grandmother they'd tried to erase, now fully present in Emma's life. Thank you for this, Emma said as I was leaving, for everything. For the money, yes, but more for just being here, for not giving up on me. I never gave up, sweetheart. I was just waiting for you to be old enough to find me. The next 3 years were the happiest of my later life. Emma called me every week from college, told me about her classes, her friends, her journalism projects. visited me during breaks, introduced me to her friends as the grandmother who saved my life. I attended her sophomore year parents' weekend, alone, because Brandon and Melissa still refused to be around me. "Their loss," Emma said. "You're the only parent I need here anyway." Jackson reached out to me 6 months before his 18th birthday. "Grandma Catherine, this is Jackson. Emma gave me your number. Can we talk?" We met at the same coffee shop where Emma and I had reunited. Jackson was 17 now, nearly 6 feet tall, with Brandon's features but none of his weakness. "Emma told me everything," he said, "about why you really left, about the lies Mom and Dad told us, about the trust fund. I'm sorry you had to learn the truth that way." "I'm not. I needed to know." He looked at me directly. "Emma said you've been waiting 9 years for us to come back to you, that you never gave up on us." "I never could." "I want to be part of your life, Grandma, not because of money, because you're my family, and I've missed you." We rebuilt our relationship slowly. Jackson was more cautious than Emma had been, more aware of the pain his parents had caused. But he came to see me every week, helped me with things around the apartment, told me about school, about soccer, about his plans for college. When he turned 18, the letter from Linda arrived. Brendan didn't even try to fight it this time. He knew he'd lost. Jackson chose me, chose the trust fund, chose a future his parents hadn't provided. And in choosing me, he chose truth over lies, love over manipulation, his own path over his parents' control. 2 years after Emma's 18th birthday, I was 78 years old when Brandon finally apologized. He showed up at my apartment on a Tuesday afternoon, looking older than his 52 years, carrying flowers from the grocery store. "Mom, can I come in?" I almost said no, almost closed the door on him like he'd closed his heart to me all those years ago. But I let him in. We sat in my small living room, the room decorated with photos of Emma and Jackson, of their graduations and achievements, and lives that Brandon had missed because of his choices. "I'm sorry," he said, "for all of it. For choosing Melissa over you, for letting her push you out, for keeping the kids from you, for everything." "Okay." "That's it? Just okay?" "What do you want me to say, Brandon? That I forgive you? That we can go back to how things were?" I shook my head. "I forgave you years ago, but forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean there aren't consequences. The consequences are that I've lost my children. Emma barely speaks to me. Jackson tolerates me but doesn't trust me. And it's all my fault." "Yes, it is." "Is there any way to fix this?" "That depends. Are you sorry because you lost your children's respect? Or are you sorry because you hurt me?" He was quiet for a long time. Then, both. "I'm sorry I hurt you. I'm sorry I was a coward. I'm sorry I let Melissa manipulate me into doing something unforgivable. And I'm sorry I've lost my kids because they see who I really am." "Who are you, Brandon?" "A weak man who made terrible choices and is trying to be better. Too late, perhaps, but trying." I looked at my son, my only child, the boy I'd raised alone after his father died, the man who'd broken my heart and was now sitting in my apartment, holding grocery store flowers and begging for absolution. The trust funds taught Emma and Jackson something important. They taught them that love isn't conditional, but access is. I never stopped loving them, but I couldn't have a relationship with them while you and Melissa controlled access.
The money was just insurance, a way to ensure that once they were adults, they could choose me without your interference.
You manipulated them. No, I gave them a choice they didn't have when they were children, and they chose me because of how you and Melissa treated them, not because of money. I paused. Emma would have come back to me even without the trust fund. She proved that when she reached out before she knew about the money. Jackson, too. The money just sweetened the deal. So what now? Now you live with your choices. You work to rebuild relationships with your children if they'll let you. You accept that I'm in their lives permanently, whether you like it or not. I stood up. And you understand that I don't owe you anything. Not my time, not my energy, not my forgiveness beyond what I've already given. You threw me away 11 years ago. I built a new life. You're not welcome in it. Mom, I'm not your mom anymore, Brandon. Not the way I used to be. I'm the woman who took care of Emma when she needed help with college. I'm the grandmother Jackson calls when he needs advice. I'm the family member who shows up. You're just the father who didn't. I showed him to the door. He left the flowers on my counter. I threw them away after he was gone. Emma graduated from Northwestern with honors and a job offer at the Chicago Tribune. Jackson got accepted to UCLA on a partial soccer scholarship with the trust fund covering the rest. I attended both celebrations, sitting in places of honor, recognized as the grandmother who'd made their dreams possible. Brandon attended too, sitting in the back, no longer welcome in the family photos. Melissa didn't come to either event. She'd moved to another state, started over with a new husband who didn't know about the children she'd alienated. At Emma's graduation dinner, she stood to give a toast. I want to thank the person who made all of this possible, not just financially, but emotionally. The person who never gave up on me, even when I couldn't see her, even when I was told lies about why she'd left. Emma's voice broke. Grandma Catherine, you taught me that love is patient, that it waits, that it doesn't give up. You waited 11 years for me to find you. And when I did, you were right there, like you'd never left. Jackson raised his glass. To Grandma, the strongest person I know. Everyone at the table drank to that, except for Brandon, who sat with tears streaming down his face, finally understanding everything he'd lost. After dinner, Emma pulled me aside. Grandma, I need to tell you something. The trust fund money, I didn't use all of it. I had scholarships, and I worked, and I was careful. There's about $100,000 left. That's your money, sweetheart. Save it for a house, for your future. I don't want to save it. I want to pay you back. Pay me back for what? For the 11 years you spent alone, for the apartment you had to move into, for everything you sacrificed. She pressed an envelope into my hands. It's a check. For the down payment on a house. A real house, not an apartment. You deserve more than 2 bedrooms and thin walls. I opened the envelope. The check was for $80,000. Emma, I can't accept this. Yes, you can. You gave me my future. Let me give you your present. 3 months later, I moved into a small house with a garden and a guest room for Emma and Jackson when they visited. It wasn't the house I'd lost, but it was mine. Bought with money my granddaughter had saved from the trust fund I'd set up to ensure she'd never forget me. The irony was beautiful. Brandon died of a heart attack at 59. Too young, too sudden, a life cut short by stress and regret and choices that had haunted him until the end. I attended the funeral. Not for Brandon, but for Emma and Jackson, who grieved the father they'd wanted him to be, rather than the father he actually been. Melissa came, bringing her new husband, looking uncomfortable and out of place among people who remembered how she destroyed a family. At the reception, she approached me. Catherine, I didn't think you'd come. I'm here for my grandchildren. Of course. She shifted her weight. I want you to know I'm sorry for how things went, for pushing you out, for everything. Are you sorry it happened?
or sorry you lost. What's the difference? One is remorse. The other is just regret for consequences. She didn't answer. Melissa, you kicked me out of my home because you couldn't share space with another woman. You kept my grandchildren from me because it gave you power. You manipulated Brandon into choosing you over his mother. And now, 10 years later, Emma and Jackson barely speak to you. They chose me. The trust fund didn't make them choose me, you did, when you lied to them for 11 years. I know that now. Good. Because the trust fund wasn't revenge, Melissa. It was insurance. Insurance that once my grandchildren were old enough to choose for themselves, they'd have every reason to choose the grandmother who never stopped loving them over the parents who lied to them. You won. I didn't win. I survived. There's a difference. I looked across the room at Emma and Jackson, standing together, supporting each other through grief. But yes, they chose me. And they always will.
I was 86 years old when Emma got married. She'd found love with a journalist she'd met at the Tribune, a kind man named Michael who understood family complications because he had his own. The wedding was small, intimate, held in the garden of my little house. Jackson walked Emma down the aisle. She'd asked him to do it, said he was the family member who'd been most present in her adult life after me. I sat in the front row, watching my granddaughter marry the love of her life, and thought about the 11 years I'd waited for this, for the moment when I'd be welcomed, celebrated, included, for the validation that the trust fund had worked exactly as I'd planned, for the proof that patience and strategy could triumph over manipulation and lies. Emma's vows included a line that made me cry. I'm standing here today because my grandmother taught me that love waits, that it endures, that it doesn't give up even when everything says it should. She looked at me when she said it. After the ceremony, Emma found me in the garden. "Thank you for this," she said, gesturing to the flowers, the lights, the magic we'd created, "for letting us use your home. This is your home too, sweetheart. It always will be. Grandma, I need to tell you something. Michael and I are planning to have kids. Soon, hopefully." She took my hand. "And I want to know if you'll help me set up trust funds for them, like you did for me and Jackson. You want to create conditional trusts?" "Not conditional, just trusts. To make sure they're taken care of, and to teach them what you taught me, that financial security is important, but family is irreplaceable." She paused. "I want to do it right, Grandma, the way you did it, with love and strategy and patience." "I'd be honored to help." That night, after the wedding guests had left and Emma and Michael had driven away to their honeymoon, I sat in my garden and thought about the 11-year war I'd waged. It had started with betrayal, my son choosing his wife over his mother, my grandchildren kept from me like prisoners from their family. It had continued with strategy, trust funds designed to ensure that once Emma and Jackson were adults, they'd have every reason to choose me. And it had ended with victory, not just financial, though the money had helped, but emotional, relational, complete. Emma and Jackson had chosen me. They'd chosen truth over lies. They'd chosen the grandmother who'd waited over the parents who'd lied. They'd chosen love. And that choice, made freely when they were old enough to understand everything, was worth more than any trust fund could ever be. I was 89 years old when Emma's daughter, my great-granddaughter, turned 3. Her name was Catherine, after me. Emma brought her to visit every week, this tiny girl with curls and curiosity, and no idea that her name carried the weight of a family war fought before she was born. "Grandma Catherine, tell me again about the trust fund," Emma asked one afternoon while little Catherine played with blocks on my living room floor. "You know the story."
"I know, but I like hearing you tell it." She poured us both tea. How did you know it would work, that Jackson and I would choose you? I didn't know, not for certain, but I knew you were both smart, kind, honest children. And I believed that once you were old enough to ask questions, once you were old enough to see through the lies, you'd come looking for truth. And the money was just insurance? The money was leverage, a way to ensure that even if you'd been completely poisoned against me, even if you believed every lie your parents told, you'd still have to face me when you turned 18. And in facing me, you'd have to decide who was telling the truth. Emma watched her daughter stack blocks carefully, seriously, with a concentration only toddlers possess. "I'm setting up a trust for Catherine," Emma said. "Michael and I both are, but not a conditional one. Just money set aside for her future, for college, for whatever she needs, because she'll never need insurance against being kept from family. I'll never do what my parents did to you." "I know you won't. But Grandma, I want you to know something. The trust fund you set up, it didn't make me love you. I already loved you. I always had, even when I couldn't see you, even when I believed the lies. Somewhere inside, I knew something was wrong. And when I was finally old enough to look for the truth, I found you waiting." She took my hand. "The money was wonderful. It changed my life, but you changed my life more." Little Catherine toddled over, climbed into my lap with the confidence of a child who's never been unwanted. "Great Grandma," she said, patting my face. "Cookie?" "After dinner, sweetheart." "Now?" "After dinner." She sighed dramatically, accepted this, and went back to her blocks. Emma laughed. "She's got your stubbornness." "Good. She'll need it." I sat there in my living room, holding my great-granddaughter, talking with my granddaughter, and thought about the 11-year war that had led to this moment. Brandon had thrown me out of my home. Melissa had kept me from my grandchildren. But I'd been patient, strategic, willing to wait as long as it took. And in the end, I'd won. Not because of money, though the trust funds had helped, but because I'd understood something Brandon and Melissa never did. You can keep children from someone, but you can't keep adults from the truth. And once Emma and Jackson were old enough to seek truth, once they were old enough to make their own choices, they'd chosen me, because I never lied to them. I just waited. And waiting, patient, strategic, unrelenting waiting, was the most powerful weapon I ever possessed.